Good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I would ask you to like, subscribe, comment, especially if you enjoy the video. This is a small channel. I'm not really looking for fame or nothing, but I would appreciate if you like, subscribe, comment, share your experience, how it relates to mine. Just engage, you feel me? So, I recently did a video about a subject, a psychological concept called Machiavellianism, and how, due to my environment, upbringing, how I kind of adopted these traits that involve, cunning, subtle manipulation, long-term thinking, long-term planning, excuse me, some like emotional detachment, and I discussed how this was part of what's called the dark triad, along with psychopathy and narcissism. Now, I don't think many people who know me at this point in my life would consider me to be a psychopath, and I'm not going to claim that, really. But there's a subject regarding psychopathy that I find fascinating. So, a little history lesson. There's a famous psychologist who came up with like a framework from which to measure to what extent someone exhibits psychopathic traits. His name is Robert Hare, and he came up with the Hare psychopathy checklist. Now, he divided it into basically two major categories: primary psychopathy, or factor 1 psychopathy, and secondary psychopathy, or factor 2 psychopathy. So, primary psychopathy is what we think about when we think of psychopaths. Very callous, lack of empathy, lack of remorse, superficial charm, like the shit they sensationalize and put in movies. Like, a good example would be, Ted Bundy. Very charming, manipulative, callous, just what they tell us to be afraid of, and what they warn us about when it comes to people who are considered psychopaths or have strong psychopathic tendencies. I'm kind of drifting away from the idea of calling people their mental disorder or psychological trait. It's kind of dehumanizing, even for psychopathic individuals. I would say someone who is psychopathic instead of saying someone who's a psychopath. But, I just think it's a better practice, especially considering my time spent in mental health. I just find it dehumanizing to identify someone as a label. But yeah, so primary psychopathy, those traits, those scary sounding traits, like a person who doesn't have empathy or remorse, is callous, manipulative, grandiose. That's, grandiosity is where you get the narcissistic element as well. But then there's secondary psychopathy, which is a little bit more, I think, common to have these traits. And what I find interesting is how secondary psychopathy, and some relate this to, sociopathy, or being a sociopath as well, even though there's not really consensus as to whether these are the same concept. Some mental health professionals consider secondary psychopathy and sociopathy the same. Some say there's difference in context. But yeah, secondary psychopathy is more about what you would call like a lower functioning individual. And I find it interesting, so I'm gonna get into it, what secondary psychopathy is. Here, and this is me using ChatGPT. ChatGPT is fucking amazing. Impulsivity, acting on the spur of the moment without considering consequences. Now, that's me. I'm an impulsive individual. Like, when I feel an emotion, an action is coming most of the time. Like, and that ties into the next trait of secondary psychopathy. experiencing intense and fluctuating emotions, often leading to erratic behavior, as I mentioned before. Now, this is where it gets kind of more complex. Lack of empathy, difficulty understanding or sharing the feelings of others, though this might be more of a result of emotional dysregulation rather than a fundamental personality trait. Now, I want y'all to remember that this isn't someone that's just cold and callous, because this is like them just kind of not being able to see where the other person's coming from, like a difficulty. And I've mentioned having this as well, like where I kind of feel like there's a disconnect between me and other people, and like I really struggle with cognitively understanding someone else's point of view. It's like there's a wall up where like it's like I'm looking through a foggy, dirty window. Like I kind of get it, but there's a disconnect. Behavioral problems, engaging in antisocial disruptive behaviors, often as a reaction to stress and instability. Again, and this was most prevalent in my adolescent years. And be honest, any period of my life where I was experiencing like a lot of stress and trauma, like I would behave badly. You know, with my man Eddie Guerrero, R.I.P., lie, cheat, steal. Those are the times where I was more likely to like do the fucked up shit, lie, just do dirty, nasty shit that I'm not proud of, but you know, I'm not gonna hide or be too ashamed of either. Like, you know, I learned, you live and you learn, and I learned from it a lot. But yeah, high aggressiveness. Now, anyone who knows me, they know when I get mad and I could be very irritable. I could get, again, not proud of this, but a lot of people close to me call me a violent person. Not glorifying it, I'm just, through my experiences, it's a lot of factors, like my environment, where I grew up, how I was treated growing up. I just became okay with violence, and especially when it comes to like me feeling like I've been mistreated or slighted or insulted, I'm perfectly okay with escalating the situation. That is fine with me. Like I will, like, when I feel like I'm being threatened or insulted, or like I will automatically become combative, like a lot of fuck you gonna do, you know, toxic masculinity shit, you feel me? You know what aggressive behavior is. Moving on, and this is by far the most like difficult part for me. Difficulty maintaining relationships, struggling to form or keep stable, healthy relationships due to emotional turbulence and erratic behavior. I've never had a successful romantic relationship. Been in 3 major ones, a couple flings. Like, there's a lot of issues, and not only me, but I'm just taking responsibility from my side. My temper, my lack of patience, my tendency to just do shit, that impulsiveness, alright, now empathy, it gets complex because I don't have zero empathy. When you hear lack of empathy, it doesn't mean you don't have any, it just means you don't have enough. Okay, so when it comes to empathy, like when it comes to people I care about, I care deeply for several people. You know, my mom, my sisters, my father, my some of my cousins, like some friends that I've had for a long time at this point. Like, I care deeply, but I liken myself to a wolf, where I have my pack, and my pack is my pack, you know? And it's not easy to be in my pack, and if you're outside of my pack, it's like you're not a priority. So when it comes to relationships, I have difficulty opening up. I have difficulty remaining patient, developing those close, like, bonds, and being vulnerable. So what underlies secondary psychopathy and this is key. Secondary psychopathy is more associated with environmental factors and emotional distress. And this is why I wanted to talk about this now. Again, I don't like the label. I don't like to have labels on myself. I don't like to put labels on other people, but I just wanted to talk about this because I'm a person who has struggled with trauma, complex trauma, repeated, prolonged trauma throughout my life. A lot of traumatic instances and long, drawn-out trauma. So, what I learned very early in life was, oh, okay, I'm being fucked with. Let me be loud and angry and violent whenever, like, I'm insulted or challenged or slighted, and that's how I'm going to react. And then it became more subtle as I got older, because, you know, as Stan Edgar said in The Boys, I can't just act like a raging entitled lunatic, lash out like a raging entitled lunatic. That's a white man's privilege. As a black man, you really can't act like you're going to jail or under the ground. So, you know, especially in my college years when I started to read more and I read about, you know, stoicism and like kind of controlling your emotions, even though that kind of just led to me repressing my emotions. And I read Sun Tzu's Art of War and Machiavelli's The Prince, where the term Machiavellianism comes from. I was like, okay, let me learn to be calm and subtle at times. So I kind of, in order to survive in this world, kind of internalize these, a lot of times useful, especially at the time, useful behaviors, but not always healthy behaviors, where I'm just like, all right, let me say just the right thing to this person, and so I can get them to react this way. Let me tell this person that I need them to do this, but not really tell them the reason that carries more weight for why I want them to, like, let me say this to this person to see how they react and try to kind of get into their psyche. Stuff like that, because I came from an environment where I had to read people and read the room or there'd be trouble. I couldn't just be how I naturally was. I had to be tricky and cunning, because I had to like subvert people's you know, nasty toxic tendencies in order to be safe. You feel me? So that's why, you know, I made that video about, you know, how I developed these Machiavellian tendencies. And when it comes to the subject of, you know, secondary psychopathy, and secondary psychopathy is funny because it's related to not just, you know, you have antisocial personality disorder, which is most times connected to psychopathy, but you have borderline personality disorder, you have narcissistic personality disorder, and this personality trait of secondary psychopathy, or set of personality traits, could come into that, like with a narcissist, them acting this way in order to maintain their sense of self, their inflated sense of self, or what they would like to be an inflated sense of self, and retain narcissistic supply, and how they react when they're not getting that supply. And with a person with borderline personality disorder, you know, their fear of abandonment and how they react when they feel abandoned, or their emotional instability, all ties in. Secondary psychopathy is tied into that, all that, but particularly antisocial personality disorder, which I don't have. But what I do have, and, you know, this is where psychology tends to get, you know, very ambiguous, and lines are very blurry between what is what. Like, I do have PTSD, and specifically complex PTSD, a disorder that is strongly correlated with borderline personality disorder, which a therapist told me I had traits of. Like, again, that's a whole nother video, like the stigma behind borderline personality disorder. I got the sense this lady didn't want to put that label on me, but I don't think it's that distinct from complex PTSD anyway. But I digress. I feel like all the aggressive behavior I've shown over the course of my life, my difficulty with connecting with other people, my impulsive behavior, my behavioral issues in my adolescence. Like, I was a fucked up kid, man. Like, I got in trouble in school a few times, and it wasn't like, it was serious shit. Like, and I just gotta be honest, like, it was serious shit. Like, you know, he was inappropriate with me in this way, or he said he was gonna do this to the school, or I got called a lot of things. Like, that's why I don't really like to label people too much now. I got called a creep, a psycho, a sicko, psychopath, sociopath, all that shit. And a lot of it, in a lot of ways, I internalized, and I was like, yeah, I'm fucking crazy, whatever. Like, and at times you actually internalize it so much, and you play it up. You're like, all right, I'm this, so this is how I'm gonna act. But yeah, back when I was a little kid, there was a lot of shit I would do, a lot of shit I would say. You know, people from high school know me. They know me for my outbursts. They know me for saying really, like, troubling things. And, you know, I toned myself down when I became an adult, whatever an adult really is. That's just a concept as well. But there's still that part that comes out when something happens, like when I feel rejected, when life isn't going the way that I ideally wanted to go. Like, even now, like, you know, I'm home taking care of my sick mother, like my mother who deserves nothing but good things to happen to her, and I feel like the world is being unfair to her, and, you know, by extension being unfair to me, as I feel like it's always been. And I don't want to be a victim. So there's that tendency to lash back out at the world because you feel angry and frustrated and stressed out, but more of all, you feel hurt. You feel like you're in pain. And yeah, that's what made me want to do this video. So just the concept of secondary psychopathy. Again, I'm not claiming to be a sociopath. It's not a label anybody wants on them. I haven't been diagnosed with any kind of antisocial personality disorder, nothing like that. But I'm a person with trauma, and I'm a person that, especially as a man, you're taught don't cry, don't complain, but, you know, anger and violence and this other toxic shit, that's how you express yourself. And that's what I learned, and I'm learning to curb these behaviors because it doesn't help you in the long run. So if you're still here, I said I wasn't gonna yap so much, but, you know, I'm a certified yapper when I get started, so it is what it is. If you stuck this long, I appreciate you. I love you. I really do love you. I mean that. Because, you know, I'm not really a psychopath. And if I am, it's just secondary. So, again, like, comment, subscribe. Watch all my other shit. Like, I talk about some interesting shit, you feel me? Like, you know, I think I'm getting good at this shit. But, yeah. Peace and love. This is yours, punching out. Peace.